This is an occasion of great significance for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints throughout the world. Dating from October 10th, 1880, when John Taylor was sustained to succeed Brigham Young as prophet, seer, and revelator, and president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We ask members of the First Presidency to please arise. It is proposed that the First Presidency sustain Russell Marion Nelson as prophet, seer, and revelator, and president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Those of the First Presidency in favor, please manifest it.
For the first time, we have an idea now of how much the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Big Investment Fund performed over the course of a year.
That fund is called Ensign Peak Advisors, and Fox 13 News investigative reporter Nate Carlisle found the public document showing how many billions of dollars it gained in 2020.
Over the last year, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has been more forthcoming about how it's investing tithing money. This latest filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission shows that despite the economic downturn of the pandemic, the church's big investment fund made money. This filing with the SEC shows the holdings of Ensign Peak Advisors at the end of 2020. When added all up, it shows the fund gained more than $6 billion in one of the most difficult financial years in American history.
Travis, my good soul. It's almost 2 o'clock. I got caught up on doing some research, and time went by, and things got neglected until my body said, hey, I need this now. Stop what you're doing. So, yeah, just finished lunch. Skipped breakfast. Almost didn't bathe and shave. And here we are, back to torment the church. And it's not because I'm lying about the church in my videos. I'm telling you the truth. I do research, like I was doing this morning. And I came across this while doing my research. So this is a consequence of me doing research this morning. Plain research. And the church, with the Doctrine and Covenants this year, forbids Mormons to study the scriptures, let alone do research. They want to indoctrinate you in the lies that they've been telling you about church history, and force you to believe them, and so then feel a certain way and thus act according to those feelings that they want you to have. And if you were to put them into practice, you'd see that there's all sorts of crimes being committed by Mormons who obey the prophets and only get feelings about the scriptures and then act on those feelings. Because if Mormons were to actually study, they'd know I'm not a threat to them. But they don't. Because I do not teach what the church is telling Mormons to believe in. I do my research. And it's sad that the church is able to brainwash Mormons to the point where Mormons can read 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 2, where it says learning of the Jews, and Mormons instead ignore that and trust the church that says Christian, Jesus. And so in verse 9, that's Jesus. No, it's not. Mormons never bother to learn anything about the Jews. They'll learn about Orthodox Jews, and they'll learn about how they're misguided, looking beyond the mark. But they never understand. The Book of Mormon places the context in pre-Babylonian captivity Judaism, which was Egyptian. Different religion. And they did not believe in Jesus. You pull an anachronism. That's a field-specific terminology. When you say that the Jews pre-Roman Emperor Constantine were Christians, because that's what anachronism is, where you place a time period into another time period to say that that other time period is the exact same time period. Whether it's individuals, objects, events, places, situations, etc., whatever. So tennis shoes among the Nephites, that's a Mormon who did that. It's child's readers stuff. Yeah, that's anachronism. Obviously they did not have tennis shoes among the Nephites. It's not just because the Nephites didn't exist. If you use the learning of the Jews on the Book of Mormon, nothing is literal history. It refers to people from history. It refers to events from history. It refers to places in history, but it is not historical. It's prophecy and revelation. And so the church, ever since I did my research, as the church taught me to do from seminary, with the brand new quad, footnotes, Bible dictionary, topical guide, they're the ones responsible. And instead of accepting that they're wrong, they attacked me when I just did what they told me to do. I was obedient. I've been the good guy. Nobody ever made a cake for me. Or is that what he says? Threw a party for me. Maybe that was what it was. Then he goes and pouts on the piano. The Prodigal Son by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Acting! Brilliant! And so I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. See, people telling me not to do something, no, you made a big error in telling me I can't do something. People telling me I'm not supposed to do something, no, I have an answer that I have a question that needs answering. Don't tell me not to search for the answers. The church taught me to look for the answers. to learn line upon line, precept upon precept. Don't tell me I can't do my study and research to find out the truth that you taught me to do. Just because September 6th happened in 1993, you don't blame me. Nevertheless, deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. Because I read that Joseph Smith, our founding prophet, said that the biblical Hebrew text was translated wrong, not just the King James Version from Article of Faith number 8. And so, I want to know. Nobody's telling me the answer. Everybody's saying, well, when you get older and you go to the temple, you'll learn secrets. Well, I did. No, they don't. You lied to me. Don't lie to me. It's going to piss me off. Mom did that for the Book of Abraham questions I had as a kid. What does this say, Mommy? That's stuff for adults too. You go to the temple and it'll explain it for you. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I, again, had to do my own research on that because nobody had the answers. And everything you think you know about it, because you found the Wikipedia page on it, it's all wrong. Dumbass Egyptologists, even the Mormon apologists. Dear God, how did you guys suck so bad? But that's what I learned. By doing the actual research, scientific, Socratic methodology, development of theories, running the tests for confirmation, produces the truth. After 3 confirmations, and if you can repeat it with multiple different tests, you've got yourself an eternal law like gravity or finicky women on Castle. So in case you hadn't seen those pictures in the last couple of videos, guess what I'm watching now? And so when you hear about Mark Hoffman, how he forged documents and fooled the prophets of the living Jesus, everybody wants to say, well, we don't know why he did it. Yeah, we do. We know exactly why he did it. The church has been lying to us about church history. They are incapable of telling us the truth. The New Saints volumes they've come out with, still repeating the same old lies and adding some new ones. God. See, now Joseph Smith is not only a polygamist, he's also an adulterer. Isn't that great? And I'm sure they also say child rapist too in there. Critics have been missing that one. God. And this is the problem that the church causes in Mormons and Mormons who leave, and thus the misinformation to nevermos, is that the church sets you up to feel the right way, so that when you don't feel good, you leave the church. I'm not feeling good about this, I'm out. No! See, if that were the case, I would have left the church as a little kid in primary. I'm not going to church today, Mommy, I quit. Because I was taught to study that the results of the Word is what establishes truth. not our feelings and our opinions and beliefs. And so it's exceedingly frustrating that the church has done such an incredible operation of indoctrination, so much so that the youth below my age do not come to my channel. And those that do, they're few are men. Women just do not come to my channel unless they're at my age and above, and primarily those of my my grandparents, my mother's generation. Oh my God. Me. And so that tells me a lot about how successful the church is in leading Mormons to their doom. And Mormons get upset with me when I warn them. The church is setting you up to murder you. 3 more days. Oaks got leaked, confessing that in 3 more days, the church has set a trap for Mormons to destroy you, murder you, ruin your lives beyond what the church has already done to you. And so it's exceedingly frustrating that I can't get through to anybody to understand the seriousness of this. And so this is the topic of the video that Mark Hoffman exposed. Because the church lies to us about church history, everything is wrong. Everything. Not a single thing this church says or does is true. It's all wrong. How could I say such a thing? Surely they've got to have done something right, something good or charitable. Did you not pay attention to my videos? I expose that the church is funding terrorism that struck on New Year's in New Orleans. And in 3 days, we've got 3 apostles who are illegal, and one of those illegals are also a funder of terrorism. And then the church news finally took it down. I did that. Because otherwise, the church is still doing the giving machines. They're still up. They haven't taken them down yet. They're going to go as long as they can on this. To the end of January, into February. I think they did last year, into February even. They announced they were extending it last year. But this year, I exposed it. They took it down. You're welcome. Never thanked me. Groundhog Day. And so the Salamander letter, which anybody, and I can't say that because nobody, this is the indoctrination that the church has pulled. And so what trap the church leaders have set for Mormons about lying about church history, Mark Hoffman exposed and got him back. If he only wasn't a dumbass and wanted to cover it all up with murder. Just forging documents and fooling the prophets and laughing about it. Because then he could have just simply come out when they finally catch on and say, the church has been lying to us about their authority. I merely exploited that. The salamander was written in such a way that it shouldn't have been believed by any rational person. But because of the church turning Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon into literal histories, the church fell into the trap that they themselves set for Mormons. The law of Purim, the Jews, Book of Esther, Deuteronomy 19:19. And so, why is the church not authorized? I saw in my research today a guy who did a book on Brigham Young, and there are some scandals involving that book because there were other faithful Mormons who also wanted to make that book, and there was controversies and jealousies and crimes being committed and attitudes galore. Leonard J. Arrington, who had been a church historian, wrote his book because of the controversies he caused. Brigham Young, American Moses. So obviously that caught my attention. False Christ alert. Huh? Moses was literal history. He wasn't Jesus. And this is because Mormon historians, under the direction and threats of the church, corporate board, are not doing a thorough research that needs to be done if they're going to be calling themselves professionals. You don't take out information simply because it's not faith promoting. And I know one of the apostles said, focus on what's faith promoting and ignore what's not. You can't do that. Because then you got women who say, well, the Book of Mormon is violent during the war parts, so I don't read that part. You kind of need to. Book of Mormon is a warning to you. It's not literal history. But the church has got Mormons so indoctrinated to keep them away from R-rated movies, so that Mormons never learn what it's like for the leaders of the church to be as evil as they are. And so Mormons only watch PG or G-rated cartoons where the enemies aren't really the bad guys. They were just having a bad day, and at the end everybody is friends. They learn to share. I can tell you right now, the prophets do not want to share with me. I keep waiting to see something on my pillow from The Godfather. Say hello to my little friend. We'll just go over R-rated movie quotes for you. Thank you, sir. May I have some more? You can't handle the truth. So yeah, Mormons are purposely led as lambs to the slaughter. Gullible and easy targets for the prophets and for others who recognize what the prophets are doing to Mormons. That's why the FBI every single year has to come out and warn Utahns about the latest scams that are coming. And without fail, a number of them have to get Gephardt. Because Mormons don't know what evil is, because they don't see it in themselves that the church made them. Right? Mormon YouTube employee and Strengthening Church Members Committee. And so, authority. What was Joseph to claim he is the leader of our church? Was it just because it was his idea, so he gets to lead it? You're not doing your research. See, Joseph Smith came out in 1838 with the visionary accounts. And if you knew your scriptures, you would know about Numbers chapter 12, verse 6. Miriam and Aaron are forming a coup against Moses. The Lord comes to the tabernacle and says, "Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision." That's what Joseph Smith calls him. I thought they were literal histories. He says the word history, and he says the word vision. And I will speak unto him in a dream. And so the doubt promoters left the church because they found out that the burned over district didn't happen until after Joseph Smith said it did. Joseph was wrong, and it wasn't even in that location. And some others that some have known about that are missing in the text if it were to be a literal history. You know, like his firstborn dying and going to the Methodist Church of Emma's family, which was, nobody else knows this, but it was north of Pittsburgh, Harmony. But everybody removes that. They've got what's faith promoting or doubt promoting, and they stick with it. And they don't go beyond to find out what actually is going on. And so Joseph Smith, like Castle, has to decide what to put in the book and what not to put in the book. And so what you put in is supposed to be important. And that's what everybody misses with the scriptures. As Christians miss it with the Bible, Mormons miss it with everything. And I will speak unto him in a dream. So go back to 1 Nephi chapter 1 again. Lehi has what? A first and second what? Second vision he has given to him by the sun god at noonday. What? Joseph Smith in his second vision has the sun god at noonday give him what? See, when you trust liars, you have to remove facts and evidence that doesn't fit your conclusion. It's not how you do research. You let the evidence lead to the conclusion. You do not make a conclusion and then have everything forced to fit that conclusion. Oh, Jews. Jesus, Christianity. No. And so this is where Joseph is telling Mormons in these visionary accounts how he's getting his authority. That he is chosen by God because of those visions. But also, there's a passage in 2 Nephi chapter 3, verse 5, that if you studied what the Jews know about the Christ, Doctrine and Covenants, section 3, verse 16, the Bible was all written by Jews, thus so is the Book of Mormon, and it's about the Jewish Christ. The Book of Mormon is about the Jewish Christ. So the first vision, just read it to you from Numbers. God chose Joseph Smith to be the Jewish Christ. But which one? Because for the Jews, King David is the Christ. His son Solomon is the Christ. All of the kings of Israel and Judah are Christs. And even technically, though the Jews call them patriarchs now, Adam, Abel, Seth, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Ephraim are all Christs. That's the learning of the Jews concerning a Christ. And so Cyrus, yes. Evangelicals are sort of right, but wrong. Trump is not the Christ. You're laying a trap for yourselves, guys. You fell for Oaks and this church setting you up. But yes, because Cyrus freed the Jews from Babylon, he is seen as a Christ, since he is a Christ, as the Persian king, in letting the Jews go. Whereas the Babylonian king, he's the bad guy, because he stole their religion and turned it Babylonian, with abominable practices of rituals and raping to turn Jewish women into Babylonians, with the kids that would be produced. And then the Greeks had their version of it, and the Jews called that the abomination of desolation, in which not only were the Greeks practicing the Greek rituals in the Jerusalem temple, the Greeks were also forcing everyone to pay to have sex with the temple female workers. And the Romans added men to that mix, prostitution. And so this is the understanding of the Jews. You have a good Christ who is murdered, his kingdom is usurped, the people are in bondage, rituals are destroyed, being done by the enemy, and they're raping, prostituting the women. And thus the need for a restoring, resurrecting Christ to set in order the temple and establish the kingdom again. That is the understanding of the Jews. And so for the Jews, there's a founding Christ, whom they call Messiah ben Joseph of Egypt. And then you have the Christ that all Jewish authors talk about, the one who restores Messiah ben Joseph's order after he's murdered and it's usurped by the enemy and abomination of desolation occurs. The restoring Christ is Messiah ben David. So So in Matthew, even though it's in the King James, you still see Christ, and you see King, and you see Son of David. The Jewish author of Matthew, if you were to see the original text, is teaching you this. Everybody would know. And the Jews would know why he's using the name of the Christ as Jesus, even though he quotes from an unknown prophet, leaving out certain key words, but then giving you that day and hour in chapter 2, of which his name is supposed to be Emmanuel. And then you have a Christian who thought it would be cool to add the wrong interpretation. It's the sun god at noonday. Amen. El, the Egyptian god Amen, the sun god at noonday. Whose headquarters was Luxor, Egypt. So thus, the Matthew author has the baby Jesus go to Egypt for his story of prophecy and revelation of a future in which they go to Egypt to fulfill the prophecies. Because he's actually born in Egypt, if you're to take a literal history. Nazareth and Mitzrayim have the same root word in the middle. So you've got different prefixes and suffixes added to them. Alrighty. So listen to this in the Book of Mormon, Mormons. Wherefore Joseph of Egypt truly saw our day. Notice in verse 6, a seer will the Lord God raise up. Verse 7, a choice seer will I raise up. See the pattern here? Joseph truly seer our day. And he obtained a promise of the Lord that out of the fruit of his loins a son, Ben in Hebrew, Messiah, son of Joseph. There it is, the Jewish Christ who starts it all off. Who would it be? We all know it's Joseph Smith Jr. This is not complicated. This is basic Judaism 101, pre-Babylonian captivity Egyptian Jews. Basic learning. Every child can figure this out. See the damage the church did to you. This is why, for the Doctrine and Covenants year, they removed all the scriptures about the Jewish Christ, who's Messiah ben David. They removed this one from the Book of Mormon. They don't want you to know. Right, Avraham Gileadi, part of September 6. They threatened him with excommunication and firing from BYU. And because he had no honor and integrity, he came crawling back on his hands and knees. Take me back. There must be some mistake. Okay, fine. And he can no longer talk about the Jewish Christ as he claims he's the expert on Isaiah. Abominable. How people cave to these evil people. When the church tells you to commit a crime or deny truth, you say no. And Mormons, without fail, are not saying no. Because they have not learned that the prophets are evil. If that's what they're telling you to do, they're not from the true God. They are wicked men who are evil disposed and designing militant persons, changing the name of Joseph Smith's church. Hey, that's what they did in verse 1. Joseph Smith history, remember, visions. Wrong name of the church. And so, Joseph Smith is to precede the coming of the birth of David, or Messiah ben David. And so them is understood as those who join Joseph Smith's church. That Joseph Smith is setting up the church, first vision. Doesn't matter if it didn't happen. Joseph is telling you it's a vision. He's telling you in the first vision he's Messiah ben Joseph. In the second vision, it's not about the restoration of the gospel that's plagiarized from the Bible. You fell for that, did you? The Book of Mormon proves that the gospel of the Bible is true. Even though Christians had it the whole time, but it needed to be restored. We're the one true interpretation as Christians. Wrong. So this guy is a Mormon. Did you catch this? He only comes to Mormons because he's a Mormon. He's restoring Joseph Smith's church that is usurped, stolen by the one who murdered him. And altering the temple rituals that will need to be set in order, section 85, the one mighty and strong, and stop the practice of prostituting Mormon women. He is the great and abominable church that we are told about in 1 Nephi chapter 13 that makes its first appearance. Even though the Jews in Jerusalem were pretty evil too. But once you understand how the Jews are writing, you see the patterns of the stories repeating itself over and over and over and over, just in different situations. Different names of the characters, different time periods, and slightly different stories. But the template is the same. The core. You have a protagonist, you have an antagonist, and you have people that are in bondage, need to be freed. You have the murder of the good guy and the need to restore and resurrect it. It's a simple pattern. Every Jew does it. And so if you are still having trouble that this is what Joseph Smith was talking about, you've never read your Doctrine and Covenants because it's also been taken out this year. The church doesn't want you to know. Verse 16 of section 103, therefore I will raise up. Again, that plagiarism from Deuteronomy 18, verse 15, the Jewish Christ. Unto my people, Mormons, not Christians, not even Jews, not Islam, not Buddhist, Hindu, anybody else, Mormons, a man who shall lead them like as Moses. And so when you get to section 107, verse 91 and 92, if only the church would have footnoted these properly for you so that you would learn, rather than keeping sacred secrets from you. And again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood, hey, that's Joseph Smith, is to preside over the whole church and to be like unto Moses, the Jewish Christ. So having Mormons call Brigham Young the American Moses, they're calling him the Christ. And not a single person is able to explain, other than me and those who have watched my videos on it, the Nauvoo temple symbolism of the particular stars that are there. The one at the top for setting is the Jews. The Jews are old and dead. Then Joseph Smith is first, the rising sun, the sunstone, Omega symbol from the Egyptians, Akhet. But the sun of Joseph doesn't reach the sun at noonday. Oh no. What is in place of the sun at noonday? Give you a hint. It's not supposed to be the Isaiah prophecy of how art thou fallen from heaven. Latin Vulgate adds Lucifer, son of the morning, which is Venus, symbolized by the inverted pentagram of Lucifer. Venus, because it's inside the solar system from the Earth, therefore being close to the sun, even though it can be upwards of 2 constellations away, never is able to reach the noonday position. Neither is Mercury. It's because the sun rises every morning to cover it up. And so to have the inverted pentagram of Lucifer smack dab in the middle makes it very clear to all Mormons who murdered and stole Joseph Smith's and his religion and committed the abomination of desolation. And if that were all I did for my research, wow, that's not enough, Travis. We can create excuses for that. You follow the money. Willard Richards and John Taylor got financially rewarded. And so there was this thing called the succession crisis. It has its own Wikipedia page. It says the succession crisis in the Latter-day Saint movement occurred after it needs to be murder, not killing. You can even put assassination. That is also appropriate to say. But killing, no. You kill bugs. You kill the enemy that attacked you first. Because otherwise, if you attack people, they are not your enemy. They are the victims of you being the enemy. And the enemy never wants to accept responsibility for what they did, for what they caused. Right, Islam? Of the movement's founder, Joseph Smith, on the 27th of June, 1844. of which those of you who are new, you don't know that every year for that I do a tribute video going over the Carthage jail assassination from my research, because that's how I found out Brigham Young was a murderer, and that's why I'm never going back to church. It's not because I'm, a sinner and I'm not studying my scriptures, because you know I am. It's like humiliate Mormons who think they can attack me and say, "Leave us alone," and then I quote a Book of Mormon passage, and they tuck tail and run and hide. You cannot be the good guys when you're the bad guys. And bad people never understand this. They think they're justified in being the bad guy. And when the victim stands up and tries to defend themselves, the bad guys say, "See, we're the victim." Right, Islam? God. So, here's what happened in summation on Wikipedia. For roughly 6 months after Smith's death, several people competed to take over his role. Did you catch that? What is the first question you should be asking yourself? Let me give you a hint. If Nelson is dead right now, how do we know who's going to take over the church? Because there's a long-standing tradition that Irene told us in 2018's April conference, that with John Taylor it began. John Taylor it began. How many times do I have to repeat that until you understand it? How many times did it take the church to repeat something until you believe them? Irene John Taylor clip. How many pay attention after repeating it for you before every single conference? Pay attention to the sustaining vote. That's section 107, verse 91 and 92. They lie to you every single time. And you believe them rather than the Doctrine and Covenants passage. And if you know about section 107, you know the answer to the question I asked you about what's wrong with that. How do we know who is supposed to succeed Joseph Smith? Who has the claim, the right, the keys, the authority? What else did Oakes say? To the office of the president. Because it's supposed to be the Jewish Christ, not Peter, James, and John. And you can't just leave out translator because you don't like it, because you don't know it. There should have been nobody competing. They were all priesthood holders under Joseph Smith. Section 107 is dated March 28th, 1835, and was put in the 1835 Doctrine and Covenants. Every single priesthood holder, all 6 of them, should have known what to do now. With the death of Joseph, they knew exactly what to do. It was in their scriptures to tell them what to do so that there would be no confusion. And yet, nobody did it. There was no succession crisis. Joseph Smith recorded in canon scripture what to do upon his death. And none of the priesthood did it. And so the conference was Sidney Rigdon, Brigham Young, and Lucy Mack. They all talked, and then at the end, everybody went their own way anyway. But there's the Mormon myth about what is not supposed to be known to everybody, but I leaked it, and the church has attacked me yet again, and then here I am. Adamon Diamon's priesthood meeting in the latter days, where Jesus is given the keys. Where do you think that came from? Verse 22. Now, I did this a month or two ago. We're doing it again in a different format, different presentation. Still the same protagonist, still the same antagonist. Mormons are still the people that are in bondage. We're sticking to the script. Verse 22. Of the Melchizedek priesthood. So, deacons, teachers, priests? No. They were adults back then, not little kids. 3. Presiding high priests, not 1. Counselors do not count as a presiding high priest. They are counselors in the first presidency of just one Joseph Smith. I just read it to you. It's down in verse 91. Joseph Smith outlined his whole organization. And what does he start it with in verse 2 through 4? Why we call it the Melchizedek priesthood and not the priesthood of Ammon. You thought it was Jesus, didn't you? So why does Nelson have us keep repeating the name of Jesus if it's so sacred and needs to be kept a secret and we need to say Melchizedek instead? You never thought about that, did you? You never watched those videos of mine, did you? Three presiding high priests were to succeed Joseph Smith. But how? Chosen by the body of the Melchizedek priesthood. An actual vote, not a sustaining. We chose Nelson to lead the church. All in favor? Any opposed? See your state president for excommunication and further punishments. That is the process that they failed to do. There was no succession crisis. The crisis happened because nobody obeyed. Everybody ignored Joseph Smith and did their own thing because they wanted power over other people to control their lives. And only Sidney Rigdon didn't want that power. He just said he was going to be the caretaker for the church until it gets restored in the latter days. Because somehow he seemed to know certain things that others didn't. Almost as if he was a part of writing the Book of Mormon. But he didn't get baptized until later that year. Thus, it's obvious Brigham Young was not authorized. So did you catch the Oaks clips yesterday? And my little note? Do not trifle what you have no authority, keys, or whatever else I said. Because Section 103 is Joseph Smith saying who's going to restore the fallen church. You have 3 days left to find them. Because Nelson ain't going to give it up. Oaks ain't going to give it up. They won't give it up. They won't even confess that they're lying to you. They're never going to confess that they got leaked, that they're going to murder you. They're going to continue to lie and deceive and deny till you're dead, or they get locked up by a federal government finally doing its job, and that ain't going to happen. Despite all the evidence that was presented to them. Just like Jack Smith. Yeah, we have more than enough evidence to convict Trump. And everybody let him get away with it. Well, I have more than enough evidence to convict this church. And everyone's letting them get away with it too. Huh. What a coincidence.